Cipher Mining, ticker symbol CIFR, is having a strong Thursday session so far, trading up roughly 6% at the time of recording. This move comes after several days of intense volatility, heavy selling, and a feeling that the stock was getting pushed around by macro headwinds rather than company-specific news. But today, the story is very different. Today, CIFR is green, it has momentum behind it, and it has a very real catalyst that investors are reacting to. That catalyst is the company's newly announced 10-year high-performance computing and artificial intelligence hosting agreement with Fluidstack. This deal is substantial, it is strategic, and it reinforces the direction the company has been outlining for months. If you've been following CIFR closely, you know that the entire narrative recently has been built around a transformation. This is no longer just a Bitcoin miner. This is a company attempting to position itself as a major infrastructure provider to the rapidly expanding world of AI. And today's news plays directly into that shift. Let's break down what's actually happening. Earlier today, Cipher announced that it has signed a long-term AI hosting colocation agreement with Fluidstack, one of its key partners. Under the deal, CIFR will deliver an additional 39 megawatts of critical IT load capacity, supported by up to 56 megawatts of gross capacity, at its Barber Lake facility in Texas. The initial 10-year contract value is approximately $830 million. There are also 2 additional 5-year extension options, and if those are exercised, the total potential contract value climbs toward $2 billion. And when you consider the broader partnership framework between Cipher and Fluidstack, along with the involvement and financial backing from Google, the total long-term potential value of their combined agreements is being estimated by analysts at around $9 billion. That is a staggering level of commercial opportunity for a company that, not long ago, was still primarily known as a Bitcoin mining operation. The market is reacting to that shift. One of the themes that has defined Cipher in recent months is the company's attempt to diversify its revenue and reduce its dependency on the very volatile cryptocurrency market. The AI boom, and specifically the need for massive amounts of high-density compute capacity, cooling infrastructure, and energy-rich land, has created a unique moment for companies that can provide those things. Cipher is based in Texas, one of the fastest-growing power hubs for AI operators and hyperscale data centers. They have access to relatively cheap energy, they have experience operating high-density facilities, and they have been preparing for an infrastructure-first business model. The AWS deal that the company announced earlier this month was the first major sign that this shift was being taken seriously by institutional partners. Today's Fluidstack expansion is the next piece of the puzzle. Now, it's also worth noting that CIFR is not rising in a vacuum today. Nvidia, the largest AI chip supplier in the world and arguably the most critical company in the entire AI ecosystem, reported excellent earnings yesterday. Nvidia's strong quarter helped lift sentiment across the board, especially for stocks that are exposed to the AI infrastructure cycle. The AI sector had been beaten down recently because of fears around interest rates, inflation, and potential trade war escalation. But Nvidia's earnings reminded the market that demand for AI compute is still running extremely hot. You cannot train or deploy large AI models without enormous amounts of compute capacity, and you cannot run that compute capacity without massive data centers. That's where CIFR fits in. So the combination of company-specific news and sector-wide positive momentum has created almost the perfect setup for a mid-session rally. Beyond the headlines, today's move matters for another reason. CIFR is in the middle of a narrative tug-of-war right now. On one side, you have investors who genuinely believe the company is transitioning into an AI-first infrastructure provider, a role with potentially huge long-term revenues. On the other side, you have skeptics who point to the debt required to build these facilities, the long lead times before major revenue starts hitting the books, and the fact that many of these contracts involve massive upfront capital expenditure. Last week's sell-off was partly driven by those concerns. Cipher priced a $1.4 billion senior secured notes offering, which caused some investors to take a more cautious approach. This debt is necessary, but it increases the company's execution risk. Investors want to know that Cipher can manage large-scale build-outs without delays, cost overruns, or technical bottlenecks. Today's new agreement with Fluidstack helps mitigate some of those concerns. It tells the market that demand exists, not just in theory, but in signed contracts. It tells investors that big clients and major tech companies are willing to rely on Cipher for reliable power, cooling, and space. It also shifts the conversation away from can Cipher pivot into AI, toward how big will Cipher become within AI infrastructure. And that is a crucial difference. Stocks that are in a transition phase often trade erratically because investors are still deciding how to value them. This Fluidstack deal is another strong signal that CIFR's long-term trajectory is pointing upward. That said, today's rally doesn't erase all the risks. The company still has to build the infrastructure it has promised. The AWS revenue ramp doesn't begin until 2026. The AI hosting deal announced today requires Cipher to deliver major capacity at Barber Lake. And the company is still deeply exposed to macroeconomic swings. If markets turn risk-off again, high-beta stocks like CIFR can easily get dragged down. But today's move shows that investors are willing to look beyond short-term volatility when the long-term narrative gets stronger. So what would make for a strong mid-session video angle? The best approach is to lean into the immediacy of the story. Something like, CIFR jumps on major new AI deal. Is this the moment the market finally gets it? That angle allows you to take viewers through the fresh news, the broader AI macro shift following Nvidia's earnings, and the bigger implications for Cipher. It also lets you address the question investors are really asking: is this just a short-term bounce, or is this the beginning of a repricing of the company's long-term potential? You can frame the video around the idea that Cipher is no longer just reacting to market conditions. It is now actively shaping its future through major commercial agreements. You can also highlight the momentum shift. After a brutal correction over the past week and a half, CIFR is showing resilience and attracting buyers again. And if the company continues to secure major hosting deals, movement like today's could become more common. You can emphasize that investors should watch the integration of contract value, the construction timeline for Barber Lake, the financing strategy, and any new announcements related to the Colchis facility. Finally, you can close with the idea that today's rally is not simply about being up 6%. It's about the market recalibrating its expectations. Cipher has now shown that there is real demand for the services it is trying to build. When a company shifts from speculative promise to measurable commercial traction, investor perception often changes dramatically. And if that shift continues, this could be one of those turning points that investors look back on later and say, that was where things started to click.